see your growth, it's amazing. Always evolving on a daily.
Welcome back to part 3. So right when I left Indiana, I went back to North Carolina. When I got back to North Carolina, I had the mindset of I'm going to do this alone. I'm going to be a single mother. I was raised by a single mom, so that wasn't so detrimental to me. I didn't feel bad for my kid because that's what I had for myself. So I had this mindset of I just got to do it alone and with my mom. So I would say for Kalani's first year, I remember I started dating right when Kalani turned 1. I started dating. And I was still, I was working at the time. We were like communicating, but I think it was more of like the things she needed. Like I'd be like, hey, send me this much for this. Send me this. We would send pictures to each other. I would send you pictures and videos, and we would FaceTime. There was nothing romantic. There was nothing, like it was just that, which is really funny with me dating because no one could believe that I had a baby this young and like, oh, I know your baby daddy's still in the picture. And I'm like, no, he isn't. No, like for her, but for me, when it came to like I think everything was left in Indiana for the both of us. Like when we left everything there because like I said, things had gotten so bad. So that kind of, I think me dating with Kalani being so young, that shaped our co-parenting relationship at a very early point of us being parents, because I think it added another element that I didn't even realize. Okay, like now I have this daughter who's impressionable, who at any point, if a guy is going to be around her, she will see them as her father. And at the time I was dating someone who wanted to be a father, who really, I could say really wanted to be a dad, who was really looking at this opportunity, who kind of fell for Kalani very fast. She was a cute baby. So I don't think that was hard. He worked at my mother's job. So my mom went to another college. She worked at another college in North Carolina. When she left us, she worked at another college. So he worked at the college with her. So I would bring Kalani on campus a lot to visit my mom. If it was like Thanksgiving, I would like dress her up in Thanksgiving outfits and Christmas outfits. So everyone on campus knew Kalani. So that's kind of how I like slid my way into that relationship. So it felt really natural for me. I didn't really have any concerns of, the co-parenting and relationship, but I think it kind of collided when we were trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to see my kid? Am I coming to North Carolina?
Which is what I usually do. That was like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It don't matter if we talking or not.
Yeah, we always, because we were family, going back to that family, no matter how ugly things had gotten, no matter what we said to each other yesterday, it's like, okay, so am I coming there? Like, how are we doing this? And I remember like I was in my bedroom and Kalani was on FaceTime with you, I think, in her room across from me. And she was young, like two. And she would take the iPad and go talk to you. And I didn't know that she was talking to you. You remember that? Mm-hmm. I didn't know that she was on the iPad with him. And I was talking to the person who I was with at the time. And we were kind of going back and forth because I think I had already told you that you can come and stay at the house if you were coming to see Kalani. And he had an issue with that. He was like, that's not normal. Like, people don't do that. And I'm like, what do you mean people don't do that? Like, that's what we do. Like, he's coming to stay here. And I didn't see anything wrong with it. And I think at that point, that's where things went from ugly to ugly-esque. Like, that's the ugliest things I got with us. Because I remember telling you, like, okay, so you can't actually stay here because my boyfriend doesn't want you to be here. Yeah. And you can kind of talk about what that felt like.
I just preface it with, like, if we're following the story right, think about how I've positioned myself or how others have positioned me to show up in her life. So imagine how I feel or what I think I represent. No matter how much we hate each other at the time, like, there's a level of, I don't think she would ever play with me like that or she would know better.
And I not to cut you off, I don't think you understood the level of hate I had for you at this moment.
No, I think I did. I think I did in retrospect. And I think it's warranted, one, two, because there was a level of hate that we might have shared, right? But I think just hearing that at the time, it went to ugliest because I felt like despite how nasty it got, and shit, let's call it like it is. I didn't expect her to be a baby mama. I didn't expect her to do the shit I saw on TV. I felt like she wasn't coming from the depths of the quote-unquote hoods that I'm coming from in a similar situation. Like, you went to high school in Stoughton. That's a suburb of Boston. Yeah. I'm from the Bronx. So a lot of that shit and rhetoric fed into that. So when I started to get, and I think let's lead into that too, like the men on the maternal side of my family have an interesting history with women. So there's a level of things that I might have seen growing up, not to say too much, right, about males and their relationships with women and how it shows up. Particularly how the women show up in that space. The level of chaos they may bring more than peace, right? I felt like I started to identify with that. A lot of that rhetoric was like, what's going on with the men in my family and the women they choose? And I think a lot of that language led into, it's no way that the person I'm around or been involved with is gonna play with me like that, because I show up as this guy who understands the Quran and the principles of the Nation of Islam and what it is to be a black man and ran the Black Student Union. So for me, it was like, why would you think that, like, I wouldn't want to be this stand-up person? And why wouldn't you think I wouldn't have a man-to-man, visceral, gangster, angry reaction around this nigga being around, this guy being around my kid? You know what I'm saying? And I think that I tried to leave. There was no room in my mind then for you to think that Kalani was going to be that young and have somebody that I couldn't check and verify around. But a lot of that wasn't just coming as her dad. And I think that in this space, and I think you might know this, but I've shared this with you before, there was still always a general level of concern for you, because I felt like because of the level of responsibility your mother left me with around dealing with you, that there was a certain level of rapport, understanding, or way to move that you should know and understand vicariously from being around me. And I think that the presence of who that person you're discussing showed up and how it happened, that your mom had something to do with it too, made the shit so ugly to me, because it's like,
it kind of gave off the same thing, like the same way that I met him is how I met you.
So it was like, and then, you know, not to fast forward it, but, and I'm totally evolved in a space where, you know, there's other parents and blended families, but the idea that my kid so young was like, yo, mommy told me I had two daddies. To me, that was a symbol of her hate for me. And it's like, how fucking could you, right? Like, the audacity of me, how I show up as a black man, you got the fucking nerve to play with me like that, with my kid. Like, not anybody else's kid, my fucking kid. You know me. You understand what I'm saying? You know me, like, to a T. You know me to a T. Like, don't fucking play with me. And that was a lot of my rhetoric and language around it. And it was like, it was even more like, one day I went down there, nigga brought them to the airport. And I think by then, there was already a level of whatever might have happened to her, whatever dumb shit he did to her that impacted my child, that she was able to see, right? We don't have to speak about it viscerally, right? But like...
Oh, we already did.
Oh, okay. See,
first episode.
Okay, yeah, so there's a level of, I didn't know that. I had an idea.
That hadn't happened yet, though.
Oh, well, it hadn't. Maybe he came to pick up and do something once or twice. I know after it happened, I seen him once. No, not at all.
You always talked about if you saw him, but you never saw him.
Oh, yeah, because there was a level I'd knock that nigga out, respectfully. Like, it was a level of that. Like, I don't know, I'm not supposed to curse on the podcast?
No, you can't.
Oh, because it was really a level of that. Like, why you playing with me? Like,
it's real and relatable.
Yeah, but I've showed up. But for real, it was a level of, I've showed up this way. No matter how nasty this shit is, guy, I never really lacked integrity. There was a level of like, I'm gonna stand on business. I could have been rude. I could have been disrespectful, but I wasn't gonna let nobody play with you or play about you. You understand what I'm saying?
For sure.
So it was like, and not to speak too in depth, but I felt like there wasn't no men around you like that.
Yeah.
So it was like, for you to even play in that wheelhouse, for a man to come around you and kind of be like that, and I'm young as shit, and I'm standing on that.
He was older than you.
And you like a little funny, like, yeah, the language is gonna
so
go there.
let's get back
But
to
that's where it was, though, because it was,
where we were.
but no, it's real and relatable.
Yeah, no,
because
I feel
it was a
you.
level of like, all right, we could beef Ebony, but there's certain lines that we can't cross. And I think in that space, it went ugly because it was like, all right, fuck you and however you moving. And I think that there was a level of, I resent you, but I'ma still hold it down. I think after those moments, there was a level of, all right, it's really just about my kids. I'm not gonna let you die on my watch.
But if you do.
Nah, it wasn't even if you do. I'm not gonna let you die on my watch. But if you're on fire, it's gonna take a while for me to spit on you. Eventually, I'm gonna put the fire out. Respectfully, I'm gonna put the fire out, but.
And it's funny that I'm laughing now because how you're saying how you felt now, I had already felt that from before.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's like I used to get so mad in those moments as being someone that I had to figure out ways of co-parenting with you because like the relationship was so hard to maintain because I feel like you thought at the time you could do whatever you wanted, say whatever you wanted, treat me however you wanted, but I had to remain this level of respect for you. And I think that this was my first time where I did not put you first, right? Like I didn't think about how this was going to affect you. I didn't care, like I had this, I think I always like stayed in line and like, you know what I mean? Like I felt like I always like held it down. Like I let you get off. I let you like crash out on me. And I would say, but I never changed my heart posture when it came to you. And I think this was the first time where you actually could feel my heart like click off.
Yeah, and I was away from you.
Yeah.
So it's like thinking about the context of the relationship as a whole, like the largest kind of looming elephant in the room is like we never really left each other. Like we did in the summertime, but in that 4 to 5 years span,
each other.
It was just always this, and that shit's not good for anybody.
Toxic. Yeah.
So by the
toxic.
time it's so much so that older folks expected us to be together. And I think we both can agree that when we talking about people teaching us to pivot, there was nobody around us, even Jamie, like she might have hinted at it, right? But it was nobody like, yo, you need to disappear for 3 months and you need to disappear for 3 months and y'all need to find something to do and come back together and kind of figure it out. It was like once we got okay with figuring it out, because we were generally both the good kids in our family compared to everybody else, or the ones that would get in trouble, not get caught, but, still have a history. Like, so we flew under the radar for a lot of stuff. And in this, because we was in college, because we was this, that, and the third, we got a certain rapport from adults that could have damaged how we dealt with each other, and so the rest of the world, right? And I could say that now at 32 years old, like, you got to give the young people responsibility, but you got to walk and talk them through it too.
So I think we're talking about now, Kalani is 2. I say like what we're talking about now, that kind of was like the overall feel of like how we were on the co-parenting journey. Like very disrespectful, very like I feel like I can treat you like this because you're treating me like this. I remember like all of our conversations were like like, well, you said this to me yesterday, so I'm gonna say this to you again today. Like, and right when we would like try to get someone to understand, it was like, but you want me to understand you, but you ain't trying to understand me. Like it was very much that. And my mom, I think, was in my corner a lot. And I think your mom was in your corner. So we weren't.
And I don't know how often they talk to each other.
Yeah.
You know how sometimes there's a level of, all right, the kids is bugging. Let's let the older adults talk. It wasn't a level of that.
No, I don't think, they were 100% behind their kid. So then kind of like what we were talking about on the first couple episodes of the podcast, 2018, I ended up losing my mom, and that was a pivotal point of co-parenting for me because this whole time I was doing it with my mom, with you there. You would come and get Kalani sometimes get like a
Shit,
one
all the
way
time.
around.
Round trip.
Sheesh.
Yeah.
Round trip.
Yeah.
So you would come to North Carolina, get Kalani,
Pick her up in the airport,
pick her up
fly
at the
back.
airport, and then fly back. And you would probably keep her for like a week to 2 weeks at a time. I would say maybe this happened like 3 times a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 times a year, and then FaceTime, all these different things. So in my head, I was a single parent. In my head. Fast forward, I lose my mom in 2018, the person who was doing it with me, right? And I remember getting to a point where I was scared, right? Because I had all these things going on in my life, and the people around me were painting my picture as if I were to call you for help, that this would be the moment where it's like, aha, I was right? Like your family would be like, I knew she wasn't competent to be a mom. I knew that she wasn't going to be able to handle it. And I didn't want to prove people right. But also as a mom, I was willing to make that sacrifice because I knew I wasn't okay with everything going on around me. And I knew that Kalani would be good if I could get her to y'all. So I remember like sitting down and making this decision and kind of weighing out my options, like, should I call him? Should I tell him what's going on, with this person that he already didn't like, and with me losing my mom, and with me having to go to this mental hospital now. And maybe your recollection is like a little better. I think that you got her after I got out of the hospital. I think she was with my godmother and her daughter at the time. And you might even got her from them at the time. My brain gets foggy around that area.
I want to say this, and make sure I get to that point. I feel like when all this is going on, I'm not clueless, but I feel clueless.
Oh yeah, you were definitely clueless.
Clueless to the point where I was at work one day and she just called me to tell me her mom died. And I don't know. Her mom had told me she was sick. I don't know if you ever told me. Your mom told me.
Yeah.
And she said, son, I'm sick. And it's like, to me, in my mind, I was the closest thing to her mother. Like, it was her, but in my mind...
She had 2 kids. Like, she had 2
yeah,
kids.
It was like, in my mind, like, her mom's was close to her, but her mom's was telling me things that she wasn't telling her. You understand? There was a level of who her mother widowed. I was on that with everybody around her mother. Like, as the boy being around, as a son. So it was like, you couldn't even get next to Miss Sherry for real. So, like, I think a large part of this, as we talking about it, is like, I just didn't know. I had an idea, but I had already resented you. I just didn't know, all right? And to put that in context, like, that moment for me is always kind of pivotal when thinking about when Kalani came. I know Kalani, no, maybe you and your cousin brought her to Anthony's wedding. My cousin got married. He got married in Virginia. That's how Kalani got to me. Yeah, my cousin Anthony got me. But I know after that, I ain't gonna lie, I'm not gonna say things went south for her, but I really started to know what the hell was going on. I think, preface all that with this, because this is my friend, right? There was a level of, I knew her family was on funny shit, excuse my French for the camera, but we real and relatable. There was a level of understanding where I felt like her family was doing family type things, right? Wasn't necessarily always encouraging her. And I think for a while her mother had set up that the person that was standing on business about that shit, if it wasn't her, it was me. So there was a certain level of shit her family wasn't gonna do if I was around. Or they knew that I had something to say, whether or not we was together. And I think that even now talking about it, I struggle with the fact that I didn't know.
Yeah.
Or I found out too late. Because it wasn't about what the fuck we had to bicker about. It was about shit I always say, like, you're gonna stand on business whether we beefing or not. As a human, I'm not letting nobody play with you or about you. And it was like, the people that was closest to you played, and your mother used to say this shit, and I used to tell her I wasn't gonna let it happen. So back to that level of responsibility, you dig me? I used to tell her that I wasn't gonna let that shit happen. And even though we beefing, part of my resentment too probably was, yo, you ain't tell me, so I couldn't do what I had to do. Like, and it was like,
No, but I think that like when we're talking about this transition and like there was this level of trust there, because even though everyone was trying to like paint you to be this way, at the end of the day, I was like, no, this is Kalani's dad. And I did know you to be like my friend or my you know, like how we always say this sibling. So it's like, this is the person that I want Kalani to be with at this time while I figure out this transition and while I try to get out of North Carolina, because that was the goal. And even though I didn't tell you at the time how nervous I was about giving her to you, I think that you could just feel where I was in life. And I think that we just had this like unsaid like conversation. It wasn't, we've never been to court with each other. We've never even had to do that. I think it was like a, hey, hold me down real quick. Like I got a lot going on, hold me down. And I think that kind of started that trust that I was able to like put in you, even though a lot of people around me were like, this is going to be the time where they take Kalani. This is going to be like, they're going to use this as leverage.
Crazy.
I think that was where our co-parenting relationship started to pivot in the more positive way, because I think you did start working with me where like wherever I was living, you know, we would meet, or there was a lot of times that out of the week, I was staying at your house 3 to 4 times out of that week because I wanted to see Kalani. No matter where I lived, I had to come see Kalani. So I lived with you a lot of this times. Even before I lived with you, I lived with you because no matter where I was, okay, I'm coming to New York for this weekend, which can fast forward us being back under the same roof with Kalani, with me, with you, your father, and your mother now.
Which is a level of like...
Which is crazy, under that same roof. And always going back to like, no matter what happened between us, there was this like level of family and this like unconditional love, right? Like no matter what it looks like, no matter what I just said to you, no matter what you said to me, we have this unconditional love because we have this little person who is... a product of this, all of this, right? And I think that I would say for me, 2020, I think started to become like the pivotal point for us and the positive and just like, okay, this has happened. This is how you feel. This is how I feel. I've said this. You said this. But at the end of the day, and I used to say this to you all the time, you don't have to like me. You used to get so mad when I said this. You don't have to like me, but we're family. You got to deal with me for the rest of your life. I remember I would say that to you in arguments all the time. And I think one day that just clicked for both of us. Like, yeah, we family. Like, no matter how we got here, we're stuck.
I think, yes. And about the space about me not knowing, I think that there was a level of like just wanting to protect you, like even though we was beefing to what you saying. And there was a level of being in New York and us always figuring it out that has a lot to do with how we got through Wheelock, how we dealt with your mom. And then there's another level of like, that point was right there. There's a level of people feeling like I was gonna take Kalani from you. That was problematic for me. So problematic and insidious that I think we started to believe that. So threatening court for sport. Like, you think we gotta go to court? And there was always this rhetoric, but I understood this because at this point it wasn't about us beefing. I was understanding her as a full human. And I think by 2020, things really did start to sort out, but I think there were times where I used to try to speak to you and the hate kind of amassed more than what we were trying to get accomplished. And that was
like for both of us.
Yeah. But I think what I'm trying to say is like, I feel like there were spaces where my hate or you felt like I was being hateful and it was misconceived because that energy was there.
Yeah.
And I think that that had a lot to do, this is why I'm following that, with people being in your ear telling you that I was going to take Kalani. And I'm saying this because a lot of the times when we would beef or things wouldn't necessarily be congruent together, you'd be like, oh, you want to take her anyway. You want to spend the time to do that. And I'm thinking about times where I've done that to you too, and where you just so hurt that everything is interpreted as an attack, right? And I think we started to change when, one, we started to check those attacks right away because they happen. So like you get on the phone and you yelling, or she get to flicking her eyes a certain way or stuttering, and it's just like, hold on, pause. But even this now, when I started getting loud, she kind of checked it. That's a natural, she knew he might be getting a little heated about that, but it's just like, heated about like, why would you even ever play with me like that? Like, I'm still fake. Why would you even play with me like that? Like, and it's being able to even in those moments, like, you know, check in, you know, have those times where we could really kind of be human, like connecting at a human level, not for every title that we have, but like as a whole human. Like, I've seen you through these stages in your life, and now we kind of parenting, still growing up together, but growing up as parents and just trying to check all that. And I think what saved us co-parenting is like, we can't talk to nobody else. We had to communicate with each other, right? Kalani's godparent was amazing, an amazing mediator, but shit got a lot more peaceful when we kicked her out the situation too. Like, it's times where we'll go to her for certain things, but it's just like when it comes to us three, we got to figure it out. Because if we got to play the game of telephone to get there, it's always going to be some messages misconstrued. So, you know, if I had to say anything or give anybody advice, it's just like, it's not easy. It takes time. You're not going to get there in a day. But it's like, and this is probably my advice for everything, preface the humanity in a person first and look at the full picture. And when you're 20-something, 17, 18, 19, you don't have the mindset to really process all that at a time. But even as we got to sit here talking about it, it was so much misguided energy, so much misguided anger. A lot of it was so wrapped up in everything else but what the situation was. And it was like, I knew that your family supported Kalani coming, and my problem with the rhetoric with them saying that I was gonna take her was, I feel like if I was there, the language was gonna be like, oh, you need to, like, I don't know. I feel like people always play two faces with it. Like, they say one thing to me and say one thing to her. And this conversation around, like, they're gonna take him from her, but if I was there or in another space, they would have told her, this is the best person for Kalani to be around, and he's gonna be this and show up this way for Kalani. But in the process of them telling them that I was gonna take you, it was a jab at you. And I think I've always struggled with that in the co-parenting situation. Like, and I think I internalized those jabs at you because I feel like you may not be defending yourself. And that's where a lot of the resentment and the anger came from, because it's despite what we mean or are to each other as a human. Like, and I say this, you know, I say this about anything. Don't let anybody play with you. But I think that is also schools I went to, understandings that I came up under, like, and how I was raised with certain things. So yeah, that's definitely, like, I do the therapy stuff now, but being able to sit in front of the camera and really talk about it is like, I think underpacking all of it, we have this kid together, and now we're working together as kids to kind of, as neo kids, and I had to kind of raise this kid, but we still trying to protect each other in the space and raise a kid that's a good, healthy part of society, right? And teaching her how to block out the noise that could have kind of trivialized us if we would have kept listening.
So yeah, like even like today, I think that we definitely have taken the things that we've learned and like all these different paths, like how you're saying, like from Wheelock to Indiana to us being in New York. I think that we talked so much about like the ugly parts, but for us to be able to sit on this couch today, there had to be some level of like respect, right? Some level of love, some level of something that kind of got us to this point today. And I think that that's what kind of got us to this place of co-parenting and just us being able to put our differences aside and just even like the different ways that we've grown up. I think you talked about it, like you do come from a two-parent household. I do come from a single parent, but kind of just putting all that together to be this like foundation for Kalani. And our village is strong. Like we have such a great village. And I think that we had to take what we learned so we've been on this journey together, like we said, for 14 years, right? And then you have people who you add onto the journey this whole time. And it's kind of like expediting the journey for everyone to kind of get them to understand where we're at without giving them too much of my side, without giving them too much of your side. But we definitely want to give them the full picture of things because, like I always tell Ivan, I do want people to understand how far we've come. I think that's really important for me. Like, I never wanted to be the type of family that just, which is why we're doing this episode. I didn't want people to look at us and be like, oh my gosh. A lot of people do that. Like, you and Ivan just have it figured out. I love the way you guys co-parent. Like, you guys are so great. And I'm like, no, like, we're going to take a moment to look at the growth of this situation because the growth is the beauty of it. Because you're taking kids who had a kid and who are now adults, you know? So I never want to just not shed light to the growth. And I'm proud of you. I think like
proud of you too, man.
Every time like Father's Day comes around or birthdays come around, you know how you send those texts? I think that we always try to highlight that growth. And like, I'm just so proud. Like I remember times where me and you couldn't get on the phone together. We had to have somebody else on the other end kind of mediating because I would tell you, don't wake up tomorrow. Or you would be like, you know, it was that bad to now sitting here having conversations and just being able to coexist, you know, in a peaceful manner. So I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I think it's definitely interesting because the foundation that we've created now, this new foundation as adults, as parents, is 10 years in, right? It's definitely can be off-putting for people who walk into co-parenting situations and they're used to something else, right? So for partners that we may choose, right, partners that we have, like she was saying, it's kind of like a sped-up process for folks. I think when you think of, I'm a New York guy, right? When you think of the trains, MTA, when you think of everybody comes to the train or rides the subway with a different standpoint, a different journey, a different mindset. If you're taking the 2 train from Wakefield, right, you're going from 241st. So it's a different journey for somebody getting on from 241st going to Brooklyn College and somebody getting on at 3rd Avenue on 49th Street or 72nd Street and going to Brooklyn College, right? And I think that people meet us and their perspectives of our journeys are different based on the stops that they get on at, right? Yeah. And you could push it even further to say that people's perspective of the journey are different based on the zip code they get on the train from, right? And I think that it's a beautiful analogy. I appreciate that. So I think that is in a way, we are we the train or are we the conductors of the train?
I think that we're the conductors because I think a lot of times too, through this journey, I find myself defending you, you know, like if somebody is just hearing you, like we say, like if someone's coming new to my life and they would hear us talk and maybe someone has gotten in trouble, Kalani has gotten in trouble, and your voice and your energy, I kind of almost like, no, you know, that's, so it's so funny how I think like we are the conductors because it's like, no, actually, like I think we just have learned to preserve this space and we have so much respect for each other that at one point in time I may have given into that and be like, well maybe, but now I'm like, no, that's my dog. Like we good, like, you know. So I do think we're the conductors because we're controlling it because it's our train, right? Yeah. Like, and that's like, we put the work into it. Like we put the work into it. So I think that it's very important. And kind of like you were saying, I think that we do have this, like the other day I was talking to Kalani. I don't even think I told you this. It was Christmas morning and she had opened up all her gifts. And for some reason we got on the subject of you. And she was like, something, you and my dad. And I was like, do you know that me and your dad like used to be together before? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, how do you know that? And she was like, I can tell by the way you guys like laugh and joke or whatever, like this like thing that you guys, yeah, she's like this thing that you guys have with each other. And I think that too just shed light to the growth, because at a certain point in her life, she didn't see that. So I think that us two just being like open with her, and I think like as corny as it may seem to people, that's why I like for her to see us do our handshake together. Like I want her to see, even like with your partner, I wanted her to see me and her like have this relationship, because that's important, because kids pay attention to how the people around them treat each other. Yeah. And that was big for me, even when Ivan or when I date. Like, I feel like I always come to him first, because I'm like, I want it to look like this. And not that I'm trying to control things, but for me, I always say raising a little girl and being a woman now, I know that there's certain things that you need to see as a little girl that teaches you. Like, it's those unsaid moments. It's those little things that you might not have to say anything, but they're always looking. And I want her to see this example of the people around her. Mm-hmm. I want her to feel secure. I want her to feel like her village has love, that there's the adults can be adults, in the background. If I disagree with you, I don't need her to feel that animosity or like that, So yeah.
Which is, and speaking to the kid, like, she's the best and the worst of both of us, right? And I think that when she talks about her feeling it or feeling the confusion, she would.
She would.
And she's shown that she's shown that very early on in life. And I think that now she'll speak about it, or she'll ask. She'll have her ways of kind of communicating that she know what's up. And I think seeing her as an aware child, or even sometimes an emotionally aware child, who she'll shut down, right? She'll have her moments where she don't want to do nothing. She's the best and worst of her mother and father. And I think, and every other influence around her, right? So grandma, school, friends. And I think that in my style with her, like, and I tell her to her mom a lot, like, I find myself explaining so much, or just trying to give her rationale. Like, even when I raise my voice, like, do you know why daddy raising his voice? You have an idea why I'm yelling at you? And if you can't really tell me, then we could discuss it. Or if you know, then we could discuss it.
Or like my favorite moments is when something happens here at school or something, I always try to FaceTime you.
Yeah.
And those are like my favorite moments. And I hope that they will be her favorite moments too growing up. Because if she's asking me for advice, I'll like get on FaceTime with him so quick, and like whether we're in the car, I'll put you up, and we'll have like still being able to like give her those 2-parent household moments.
Yeah.
Even if we aren't under the same roof. And I think that that's what kind of changed my mindset when it came to co-parenting, and that's what makes me be able to kind of stay consistent with my energy and vibe towards you, because it's not necessarily how you make me feel. Like, I'm not worried about that. It's more so what we can provide for her, and kind of, I don't think that our child anything should be taken away from her.
Yeah.
And that's what I think I always parent from, that mindset of like, we're not under the same roof. We're not even in the same state, but nobody would know that because she sees you every weekend. So I love the way how our co-parenting journey looks today. And I can't wait to see how it looks in 3 years and 5 years. I do see us only going up from here. So I'm excited. And I thank you for being here today.
Wow, thank you.
And this was amazing. This was great. I'm pretty sure this won't be the only time that, the viewers see you.
Maybe we add Kalani to the next one.
Yeah, that would be cool. I do a Q&A with her. Yeah. That would be dope. But again, thank you for being here.
Thank you for giving us the space.
Yeah, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for tuning into the Real Joy podcast. I hope today's conversation brought you closer to finding your own joy and left you feeling inspired. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you like what you heard, share it with your circle. It might be just the thing they need. Let's keep growing, glowing, and finding joy together. Until next time, take care of yourself and remember to keep it relaxed, relatable, and real. See you soon.
I can see you making moves. The chosen one, we steady chosen you. She dope as hell, plus she a Libra too.